Thanks for tuning in to the summer job search for 1Ls and 2Ls. In this video, we'll go over briefly what to expect for your summer legal experience, as well as 6 tips to finding a summer job. So first of all, the expectations from our office for you are that every student find summer legal work. We use the term summer kind of generally, and it's just important that you find legal work throughout your law school career. If summers are not doable for you, then you would have to find time during either fall or spring semester to get some legal experience under your belt. On your end, expectations that you should have are to align your interests, consider other practicalities, and find gaps on your resume to find work experience to both help you build confidence and strengthen skills, as well as expand your own professional network and prove capability to future employers. So keep in mind, a lot of the skills that you'll develop throughout your job search will eventually turn into job development. So these are not things that you take into account now while you're in law school and then you get to forget after you found a job. All of these different skills and tricks and tips and different resources that you'll be using will help you expand your network, improve your skills, and strengthen your resume now long into your career. Because you can do so many things with a law degree, the options are quite endless. And to some people, that's inspiring, that's motivating. To others, that seems way too overwhelming. So if you need some guidance on how to maybe exclude some options of what to look for in your search or to try to narrow down your focus, while keeping in mind that an open mind is very beneficial for you, especially early in your law school career, like your 1L year. But if you need to narrow your focus or just find out a little bit more of options out there, please do take a look at our personal and career exploration folder within the case resource library. There are a couple different assessments that would be really useful for you to figure out more about your interests, your strengths, your different working tendencies to help narrow down what you should be looking for. In addition to the resource library available in CASE, CASE also has a module or a part of the platform called Research Tools. I highly recommend you take a look at all of the different possibilities or searching filters that you can learn from in this research tool area. You can find out average starting salaries of MSU law students as well as graduates. You can find out where are most people going. So are they going into law firms? Are they going into government positions? Are they becoming judicial clerks? Are they working in public interest, etc.? You can learn more about each of those areas. And possibly most beneficial is about the timing. So when are people finding jobs? When are they getting those offers, as well as how? So are they being referred from a family, friend, colleague? Another type of reference, are they applying to jobs blindly on different job banks? Are they self-initiating contact with employers, etc.? So just looking at all of these different breakdowns about how, when, and where MSU law students as well as grads find jobs can help you in your job search. So the research of what has worked for others in the past is always very beneficial, just to find out any different trends to plan for your job search. But most importantly is going to be an individualized job search. So what is important to you? Before even starting to look for summer work or legal experience throughout your law school career, you'll have to ask yourself these questions. So what constraints might I have? Am I tied to a certain location or certain timing, meaning can I only work part-time or do I need to find full-time work? Will this job allow me to develop or improve my skills that need improvement? Would it help me to expand my network in an area where I'm lacking one? So perhaps it's not a job that would initially seem very interesting to you, but the location itself is very important. Could this position fill a void on my resume? Could it lead to a post-grad offer? Especially during your 2L year, this is important to consider. and also a 3L year if you have a summer position. Will this likely lead to something long-term is a great thing to consider. And lastly, in this non-all-inclusive list, will it narrow down options of what you want to do? So even if the job doesn't feel like a perfect fit or doesn't sound like a perfect fit for you, could it potentially help you either prove interest in an area or disprove interest in an area and eventually help you narrow down your options? So we've talked about things to consider before you even start your job search. Ways to look for a good match of, of employment, things to consider before you apply to places. But now let's talk about how to actually find those jobs. So the next section is called 6 Ways to Find Your Summer Job for both beginners as well as advanced job seekers. A note before we get started: to stay humble, but hustle hard. So keep in mind throughout your job search that the majority of legal positions, both student positions as well as post-grad, are never found on a job bank. They're never posted on a website. Vacancies aren't headlined in any electronic newspaper anymore. So this is really frustrating for a career advisor, but I know even more so for you, a job seeker. This means that you have to put in a lot more work than just scanning different job banks, filling out the listed required application materials. This means that you have to expand a network. This means you have to get out of your comfort zone and make some cold calls or cold emails. And just keep in mind that although it's frustrating, law is an elite profession, and this is just one of the many ways to determine who is willing to put in the work to do the job. So if you're going the extra mile during your job search, that might be a hint toward your work ethic and work product that you could display when you have the job. So take your job search very seriously. Putting in the work early will pay off in the long run. And although I can recognize that all of you are holding these various life roles at this exact moment. So you're a job seeker, you're a student, perhaps you're also an employee, a daughter or a son or someone's spouse, a parent. You have all these different responsibilities. So keep in mind that your job search should be taken seriously, but it doesn't have to be 100% of the time at 100% of your effort. So take it seriously, but if you're organized and strategic early, you'll be working smarter than you will be working harder. So these tips are organized for both the beginner and advanced categories of job seeker, but please, I urge you to fluidly choose from both sides. So on some days, it might be better for you to just stick with beginner or kind of surface level searching. Other days, when you have more time and aren't stretched thin in every other life role that you have, move on to the advanced and check off those boxes as well. So it's not meant to be a one track where you choose either beginner or advanced all throughout, but instead something that you do fluidly back and forth for each. The very first thing that you'll need to do in order to find summer work is to get organized. Do it early, it helps you in the long run. Beginners, this might mean just making notes of different employers that you've applied to, whether you do that in a planner, maybe you have a Google Doc started of your own, whatever you need to do to give yourself reminders of, oh, I've already applied to that person or that employer. I applied to them a month ago and they told me to follow up. Just keep track of that. For some of you, that might mean creating a spreadsheet, or you can even use the tasks feature in Case to track different job search and application status. So if you Google my job search tracker from themuse.com, they have a very thorough spreadsheet that you can use and tailor to be your own about different steps that you might be considering for each stage of the job search process. So what you should be doing before you apply, after you apply, before an interview, etc. So you've got yourself ready and organized to note all of your different application statuses. The next thing you need to do in advance is to prepare your application materials. So most positions will require, or all positions, sorry, will require a legal resume. This is not something that you've used before law school. This is a resume geared directly toward legal employers, highlighting skills that they typically want, regardless of the position. So typically employers are looking for strong writing skills. They're looking for strong research skills, analytical skills, as well as a plethora of what are considered soft skills. So that could be your work ethic, that could be organizational skills, time management, etc. Additionally, most positions will require a cover letter. These, you can't do too much in advance. You can set up different formatting. You can have even a template introductory paragraph possibly. But other than that, each cover letter you write should be tailored for each position you're applying to. So you'll want to make it different depending on the employer. You'll want to make it different based on the job that you're applying to. You don't want to use the same one for each application. Another example of a commonly asked for application material would be a writing sample. As a 1L, you're going to use one of your RWA samples that you'll come up with. As a 2L, you likely and hopefully have a couple more options, both from RWA as well as any work product that you've had. And of course, you have to be given permission to use that. Another commonly asked for application material is a transcript. So at some point, once you receive your grades, you will want to request an electronic copy of your transcript here from the registrar at MSU Law. For the advanced way to prepare for your application materials would be to email your assigned career services advisor and ask them to look over your application materials. So we are more than happy to provide feedback even while you're preparing for exams. It's a very low effort thing that you can check off your list, is just to email your application materials and we'll do the work while you're studying and you can focus on exams during that time. Another thing you can do is schedule an appointment. So we do have availability throughout this exam time. If your exams finish early or if you have a large break and just need to get away from the books for a minute, we're more than happy to look over your materials and talk about them via an appointment as well. Step number 3 is to review CASE job listings. So utilizing CASE to find different postings. At a beginner stage, you can, or maybe even the first step for all people would be peruse any open job listings that are posted in CASE. You click on a job posting that seems intriguing to you for whatever reason. Maybe it's the location that caught your eye, maybe it's the employer name or the job title. But once you're able to learn a little bit more about it, read about eligibility and application method, you can decide if it's a good fit for you. To save yourself some work, you can save search filters. So if you're looking for a job in Texas and you don't want to change those filters every time, you can save those filters in the OCI and job listings tab in CASE. I would suggest just starting with geographic location preference, so whether that's city or state or a surrounding city area, and then maybe with keywords and job titles, you can play around with those filters as well. Anything more detailed than that might not come up with an accurate representation of those results. So just keep that in mind. I suggest you do filter little to start, and you can always add more filters. Just as any other search engine, you'll come up with fewer and fewer results as you filter other ones out. Another thing that you can do, so you can dig a little bit deeper with the CASE filter or CASE features to find different job listings. So the job listings tab defaults to only available postings, so ones that are currently open. But if you want to dig a little bit further, you can open the search results to include old job postings that will help you identify some trends. So perhaps you want to look at old postings from this time last year, or maybe the month ahead last year. and just determine what might be coming around the corner. So what postings may be annual that you can kind of keep an eye out for in the upcoming days or weeks. Another thing you can do is search the employer directory. So by clicking on that employers tab in the case platform, you can target specific employers and look at their history of job postings. So let's say you have your eye on a mid-sized firm over in Grand Rapids and you currently don't see any posted jobs for that firm, but you really want to work there for whatever reason. You can look in the employer directory to see if they have any history of job postings. So a history would tell you a time of year that they typically post. It could tell you to kind of hold off on cold calling because you know that they typically post maybe a month later in the year than you're currently looking. Or it could tell you that they don't have a history of job postings. And then in that case, there would be a need for a cold email or a cold introduction on your behalf. To review a couple of those things that were discussed as far as case features, I wanted to show you a few examples, so a few screen grabs. So here's a screen grab to show you how to do a saved job search. So if you're in the job listings tab and you keep filtering every time on Detroit area, but you don't want to mess with those filters every time. If you click in the bottom green bar where it says turn on email alerts for this search, and then click My Save Searches and Alerts, you'll be able to determine if you want to just save those filters, and you can also decide if you want an email alert sent to you for new results. So that's how you save those search filters in case. I discussed briefly the benefits of looking in old job postings, and you can do that by clicking on the job status filter and including application closed. That'll show you all of the old postings. And from there, you can even filter down to different dates. It could be relative dates or it could be a range of specific month, day, and year, whatever works well for you in your planning, but you can open up those old job postings just to find out a little bit more about different hiring trends. And lastly, to recap, the tips in step number 3 for your job search is utilizing the employer directory. So perhaps there's an employer or employers that you're very interested in working for. Once you search for that employer in the employer directory and click on their profile, there's a tab called OCI and job listings. And if you click that, it'll show you all historical information of their job listings, both ones that were posted a while ago and have since closed, as well as active postings that are available. The case job listings as well as the employer directory are a great place to start your job search. However, they are not the only tools you should be using. So on to tip number 4, utilize other job banks. So the resource library in CASE is a great place to find a number of outside law-related job banks. There's a folder specifically called job banks that has both general law-related job banks across the nation, as well as ones that are regional and more. So take a look at that. Additionally, in the practice area and employment type folder, there's going to be countless others. So if you're interested only in private practice, so you want to work in a firm and nowhere else, there's a folder for that that includes a lot of different resources specific to that type of work. Same thing with public interest. Same thing with intellectual property or patent type work. There's many more that are in that folder. So take a look at the practice area and employment type folder and then open up whichever folder is of interest to you. There you'll find a number of different job banks as well. Additionally, do not overlook the publicly available job banks. So in CASE and in the resource library, you'll find law-specific resources, but That's not to say that there's not a possible law clerk position posted on ZipRecruiter that hasn't yet made it into our case database. So um, although using the case job listings is very beneficial and there's a lot on there, it should not be your only resource that you use. And when you use these other resources or find these other job banks, it's also helpful to set up saved searches on those as well, so you don't have to open up 15 different job banks every week to look for different postings. But instead, if you are able to save searches or request to be added to various listserv, that can help do a lot of the work for you. So one example is to consider joining either a state bar as a student or various state bar sections or the American Bar Association and their various sections. A lot of times that'll include you being on a listserv to get wind of different job postings, different networking events, and that sort of thing. To recap, here's a screen grab of what you'll see once you click on the resource library within CASE. So there's a number of different folders over here, but one specifically that'll be helpful to most students in their job search is the Externship Folder, possibly the out-of-state job search folder if you're interested in working outside of Michigan. And one mentioned on the previous slide was the Practice Area Employment Type folder. And you'll see that in more detail over on the right side of your screen now, of all the different folders that contain specific resources, including job banks based on those practice areas or employment type. And then back on the left, the last folder that I've circled here is called General and National Law Job Banks. So those are more for a general search and to be used in conjunction with any practice area or employment type specific resources. Tip number 5 is to lean on and grow your professional network. So even for those students who may feel like you have a professional network population 0 to begin with, every one of you has multiple law professors that you've worked with that have seen your work product and hopefully know your name by now based on your participation or conversations during office hours. So think about even just at the very basic level. You'll want to let all of your family, all of your friends, different acquaintances, people you run into at the bank or whoever that may be, let them know that you're looking for a legal job this summer. That seems silly and oversimplified, but if people don't know you're looking for work, they don't know to keep an ear out for you. So any of those people within your current circle, you can ask them to maybe just have a 20 to 30-minute talk. It could be by phone or Zoom. One silver lining of what's going on in our world right now is that people have become more accessible. So in a typical year, if an MSU law student is hoping to work in Denver, Colorado, but has absolutely no relationships out there right now, it'd be very hard for them to kind of get some face time with any attorneys working out in Denver. But now people across the nation are more and more comfortable with video conferencing and connecting with people from afar, that it's a lot easier to make that ask. So if you have 20 to 30 minutes of a professional's time to ask them questions, to learn from their experience about how did they find a job, what are they looking for in a law clerk or a legal intern, that lesson learned or that conversation is invaluable to your job search. So I highly suggest you request a few of those conversations. And with anyone, always ask who else they might recommend you connect with. So if you start with one conversation and you feel like, oh, where do I go from here? Keep in mind that one of the last questions you should always ask is who they might recommend you also reach out to, and that can just snowball your network fairly quickly. Next, those people ready to dig a little bit deeper and peel back another layer of their job search onion, um, they'll go that next step of researching and identifying potential connections to meet up with. Again, that can be virtually. The goal is always to learn more about their work, maybe their specific employer, their career path, whatever it may be to help build your knowledge of the type of work you're looking to do. Again, you're just going to request a short amount of time. You want to make sure to respect professionals' time and not request more than 30 minutes unless they do so. But you can learn a lot from these conversations. So how do we find these people? How do we research and then identify these potential connections if we don't already know each other? One way is by LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has a very robust search feature that will allow you to look for MSU Law alumni. They'll let you look for MSU alumni. They'll let you look for professionals who are working in certain geographic regions, who might have the same professional affiliations as you. So really rely on these free and accessible tools that are out there for everyone, like LinkedIn. Another search engine you can use is Martindale. Martindale.com is used for attorneys and law firms to find one another essentially. And similarly, you can filter by location, by practice area, by law school attended. So that can be helpful for you as well. Law Connect is a very new one. It's a LinkedIn meets mentorship platform that allows MSU law students to identify potential mentors. Again, I'm going to point out the case and the resources available in there. One specifically is the contacts or employer directory. That will help you identify potential connections to reach out to for that conversation. Employer websites is another great one. So through a simple Google search, you can find any public interest organization or most public interest organizations within a certain geographic region. And from there, you can find their individual websites to learn more about them and about specific people who work on their team. And of course, bar directories. So that's publicly available information to help you identify attorneys all across the nation. By using those bar directories, you can find contact information and possibly some commonalities to help break the ice when you start the conversation. So far you've gotten yourself organized, you've prepared your application materials, you've utilized the resources in CASE as well as additional job banks to look for jobs, and then you've tapped into your network. So you've both let everyone know that you're looking for work as well as made strategic attempts to expand your network. The next thing that you need to do in your job search for this upcoming summer is to take initiative and start sending those cold applications. So for every job seeker, whether you're beginner or advanced, know who to direct your questions to. Of course, you're going to be polite to all you interact with. Be prepared and direct. So no one should read your email in its entirety and not be very sure of what it is you're asking. So be forward in the fact that you're going to ask for work. You're essentially applying to a job that you don't know exists, but you're going to ask them how to apply and attach your resume to save yourself and to save the recipient an extra email in their inbox. So while of course being respectful of everyone's time, you're going to want to write a concise email or a concise conversation on the phone, but be direct as well. So going back to the first part of being polite, make sure you're thanking everyone for their help, either direct help or helping you figure out who you could direct your questions to. So back to the beginning of knowing who to direct questions to. This is going to be specific to every employer, or different for every employer, sorry. Some organizations have human resources professionals that you're going to want to reach out to. Others, like judges, don't necessarily have an HR team. They instead would request or require that you reach out to their judicial assistants or their law clerks. In a small or solo practice, a small firm or a solo practice, similarly, they're not going to have an HR team available, or likely not. If that's the case, think strategically about who you should reach out to. Larger organizations and businesses often do have a recruiting team, and that would be the best way to start. So after you identify who to reach out to, you make the direct but polite ask about if they have a need for a legal intern or a law clerk or whatever is common in their organization. An advanced job seeker would go that extra mile and find a connection to somebody on the inside. So whether that is a connection through your law school, perhaps you've identified an MSU law alum, whether that's a connection because of participation in charitable organizations, maybe you as well as another attorney on the small team have a deep interest in the Make-A-Wish Foundation or whatever it may be. I'm just thinking of one. Try to find that connection. So even if you don't know somebody on the inside, try to identify an icebreaker to introduce yourself. Similarly, as discussed, you're going to write a concise but inclusive email. So what sets you apart as a candidate? You want to make sure to have that person remember your email in a good way, while also being respectful of their time to keep it as short as possible. It is most respectful to not email more than one person at an organization unless you were instructed to do so. By emailing more than one, it gives the impression of one, impatience, that you couldn't wait for one person to follow up, or two, possibly that you didn't trust one person to follow through with whatever it was that you were asking. So be cognizant of that. But along those same lines, do plan to follow up. So if you don't hear anything after maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks, follow up with another email, maybe a phone call, just to make sure they received your message. But don't follow up after that. So just keep that in mind, that you should plan to follow up once, but I would be hesitant to advise you to follow up more than that. All job seekers, but especially advanced, will get comfortable with this, but you should expect a low response rate. So these are cold applications. You don't know if the employer is receiving a ton of them, or if they're totally unfamiliar with what you're asking, but expect a low response rate and try not to let that discourage you. So keep your head up and keep plugging away at it, and it will pay off. All right, you've stuck with me for this far. Thank you so much for that. We're going to go through a few key takeaways and we'll be all set for today. So first of all, be strategic. So you're trying to find legal employment that will, one, help you build confidence in the skills that you have. So finding work that matches areas of weakness of yours would be really beneficial, especially early on in your law school career. But also finding work that is interesting to you and that you hope to be doing long term is great. So be strategic about what types of things you're applying for, but keep an open mind. So it's almost like an oxymoron there, that you're trying to find work that's a good fit for you, but at some point in your job search, if you're not getting a lot of traction, you'll want to open up your search even more. So be open to different opportunities, especially early on. There's so much for you to learn out there, and there's so many different areas of work that might be of interest to you that you haven't even thought of yet. So be open to various opportunities. Another takeaway is to get creative. So the majority of legal jobs are not found in a job bank. There are a lot of them in a job bank, but most people find work outside of those. So get creative for how you plan to find work. And along those same lines, expect to put work into your job search. So We encourage you to work smarter rather than harder. And you can do that by knowing different resources and leveraging our help here in the Career Services Office, rather, sorry, to help you out to find that legal employment. Thank you for listening in. I hope you found these tips valuable. Just a reminder that these are general tips meant to be used by all students, but working with your career services advisor will help you to develop a more individualized plan. So what specific resources should you be looking at? What type of work might you be looking for, etc. And we can help you kind of hash out those details. In addition to helping you develop your job search plan and helping you search for a job, we look forward to celebrating with you once you find one. Take care.